right, CT, let's do it.
All right. Let's go. Cutoffs and Coffee, episode 15. Welcome back, James and CT here from T3 Performance. Today, special guest, Youngstown State head strength and conditioning coach, host of the Jacked Athlete podcast, which is probably the second best name behind Cutoffs and Coffee, I'd have to say. Author of the Vertical Jump Protocol and Hypertrophy Clusters, and a jacked athlete himself. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jake Tuura. Jake, thank you for coming on the podcast tonight, man. How you doing?
Great, but I'm not the head strength coach. I'm just.
I was going to say it, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to disrespect.
Well, we don't really have a head. It's just all assistants.
Yeah.
So.
Well, welcome, man. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How about you?
Great over here. Like starting this question. Like starting the podcast with this question. You know, gave you a little bit of an intro. Said just a little bit about you. What's something that we need to know about you that we can't find on the internet, or that we can't find from just an internet intro like that?
What you need to know, really? Well, I didn't expect that. What do you need to know about me? Let's see.
We just started introducing that question like 2 episodes ago, and it
my
throws
favorite
people
my
off.
favorite my favorite superhero is Batman.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
Who's your Batman?
Who is my Batman? What do you mean?
Yeah, which actor?
Christian Bale. Christian Bale. Christian Bale. Yes. Yeah.
yeah. Christian Bale is my Batman. James,
he's the Batman. Christian Bale is Christian Bale is the Batman, and Batman's the best superhero. Hands down.
Preach. I'm glad we're all on the same page there. James, start us off, man. Let's get into this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So when I was a young strength coach, or just getting into it, I was like teaching part-time at a school as a PE teacher, and then I got this job at a place called T3 Performance. And within the first hour of training, we had a training director who was taking me through the process of, hey, this is how we warm up athletes. And just my onboarding really opened my eyes to realize I was doing everything wrong, in my, 8 years of lifting as an athlete and then education to be a strength coach. And he kind of just opened my eyes. It was like taking that red pill where I was like, holy crap, I need to learn a lot more if I'm going to be successful in this. Did you have any moments that kind of shifted the way you thought about training or how you coach your athletes?
Yeah, probably multiple times. I would say I went through the path of most strength coaches where I wasn't the best athlete, and then I just got in the weight room, lifted weights. You see a performance gain, you get stronger, get more powerful, and then you see it transfer to sport. So then we start to think, okay, every single athlete in the world needs to lift weights and do power training or speed training. They're going to perform better. But so I had all these ideas in my brain, and I trained myself. I got my master's degree. I interned at University of Minnesota. So I was under Cal Diaz for a summer, other strength coaches at the Big Ten level. You think that people, the strength field is very effective at improving performance and all these ideas I have in my brain. So basically I'm so zoomed in on performance, on the weight room performance. And then I came to Youngstown, let's say it was like 6 months down the line, we hired a new women's soccer coach. And he pulled me in the office because I was working with women's soccer. He pulled me in the office for the first time. This was right before Christmas break. And I went in and I was like, all right, here's what I'm going to do with the girls. I'm going to do like GPP, 1x20, squat, all the weight room stuff, I was thinking maybe it's going to impress him or see him, let him a pretty knowledgeable guy, because I think at the time I was a pretty knowledgeable guy. And then he said, okay, how are you going to help me put the ball in the back of the net? And, like, honestly though, and still, I don't think there's a strength coach in the world. How do you answer that question? What do you say? Oh, it's not my job to put the ball in. Well, yes, it is. You're working with the soccer team. That is the only goal, is to score one more goal than the other team. That is the goal of the sport. So then this whole process it probably took me about a year, maybe over a year, having enough conversations with him to kind of realize the stupidity of, in my opinion, the stupidity of most of the things that we value as strength coaches. Because what are they doing to help you win the game? And I think, let's just take an example. I'm a strength coach, and I do this too. I do this myself because every athletes have different perceptions of what you do. Coaches have different perceptions of what you do. This you can affect this positively to hopefully change wins and losses, change an athlete experience, something like that. I post a video online of an athlete squatting 300 pounds. Like, they feel great about themselves. Coach loves it, whatever. But what does that 300-pound squat have anything to do with them scoring the basketball? You know, and they're very different. Pretty much nothing. And how many strength coaches will post videos on Twitter or on Instagram of their athlete doing a 5-second eccentric on a single leg pistol squat, and it looks beautiful, but who cares? They play baseball. Like, who cares how this thing looks, dude? There is such a disconnect between that exercise and the dude pitching 100 miles per hour, you know? And we'll go down so many routes to justify why we're doing what we're doing. I just think that because we're so isolated, you have the coaching staff, the medical staff, the strength coaching staff, we all do our own thing and we all specialize in our own thing. We zoom in way too much on what we do that we lose sight of what we're trying to do, which is win the game. So that was I think my red pill moment of, it wasn't even a moment. It was like a whole year process or 2-year process of realizing. This was like a decade into me coaching, realizing that whole last decade of knowledge I had gained was pretty useless. Because it is, man. It's about winning the game, and how much of your stuff, your progression models, your percentage training, all this stuff, what does it really matter? And now if you just take how I train, for example. I train because I want big muscles. I train because I want vertical jump. I want healthy tendons. That's what I want. But if I'm working with a basketball athlete, the goal is for them to put the ball in the hoop and prevent the other team from putting the ball in the hoop. So I don't approach it the same way. I give a lot more autonomy. If they don't love lifting, they don't love lifting. I'm not going to force anything on them. I'm not going to, I mean, I might, if a coach wants that, or if I feel they might need that. But I think there's such a disconnect between the weight room and winning the actual game. So that was my moment. I think that made sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that the difference between like what correlations can we draw, from our training methods and how we interact with our athletes, and then having a hard stop at the causation and not going to that causation ever as a strength coach, but because we can't claim that. Just like we were talking before we started recording. We can't claim wins. We can't claim losses. We can't claim injuries. We can't really claim the success story. So where does that leave us? There is correlation in there. And I think that's what it's our job to find that correlation and make sure we're working in that realm. But respecting the game itself is like, there's a winner and there's a loser.
Yeah. So Jake, so you were following the book for the most part up until then, right? For that decade, doing everything you were told, doing everything that you thought was right. Did everything then change to what the athletes want, what the athletes are thinking, what the coaches are thinking, or did you blend the two? Kind of how did you change after that? You said after that whole year, after you had that realization, what changed specifically in the weight room for the kids who were working with you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I used to look at it as like, okay, I think as a strength coach, you look at it as you're trying to improve performance, and the things you can improve performance in are like for most team sports are like vertical jump, sprint speed, change of direction, things that you can objectively track in a closed environment. So those are things we're focusing on, making you more just a faster athlete, more powerful athlete. So that's what I really cared about. I didn't really care like injuries, whatever, they're going to happen. So basically, it was, I think, as a strength coach, you're going, I'm trying to improve performance and I'm trying to reduce the likelihood of injury. Or we'll often use the term prevent injuries, which is idiotic because prevention means that you're stopping from happening. You are not stopping any injury from happening. So please stop using injury prevention. It's idiotic to use that term. So I was really focused on improving performance. So I was doing all this like French contrast, high volume training, just athletes come in, let's freaking kill them in the weight room. And then that whole process, it was like I shifted from higher volume, higher intensity to a lot lower volume, a lot lower intensity because I'm like, okay, if I improve jump performance, what does it mean for the game? If I improve sprint speed, what does it mean for the game? Not much, so then I really shifted from let's improve these isolated performance measures to let's reduce the likelihood of injuries. And now I look at what most coaches do in practices, I would say across the board all the time, is we just overload athletes with volume. You can talk and say that I'm about quality over quantity, but there are very few coaches I've met that are actually practice that. It's always about quantity. They always extend it over like further and further. Like, dude, take the game of basketball, 40-minute game in college. But we're going to practice 3 hours or something like that. Why? And these are 18-year-old kids who are at the Division I level. Do we need to do layup drills? I don't think so. Do you need to do these isolated things? At this point, maybe if you're just learning basketball, go ahead. But when we do it like that, we're just extending the practice time, and the athletes, they go slower and slower and slower. I would be curious to look at what is their speed of basketball action when they come onto campus. Let's say the first day of practice. What is their speed of basketball action? And then what is their speed of basketball action when the first game starts after all the preseason training has happened? I bet you everyone is slower. Why? Why did we do all this stuff? We just made them worse. We made them less explosive. And what is always the difference from Division III, Division II, Division I to pro? It's the speed of action of the sport. But that's hard to measure those things. But I just think that the practices, that is the major stress on athletes, and we're just coaches, they're overloading the athletes with that. So if I'm about performance and I get them in the weight room and I'm like, I'm going to freaking kill you with French contrast and high volume training, I'm just making them worse. I'm making them more prone to get hurt because I'm overloading them with volume. Every single injury you can track back to fatigue. You can do all the mechanics work that you want to do in the world, but if you overload an athlete with volume and they get chronically fatigued, they're more likely to get hurt. So I think, for me, how I shifted with that like red pill experience was going away from the let's improve performance in these isolated physical measures and let me kill the athletes and make them mentally tough and all this garbage, to they can come in and lift and let's do all the basic things that I used to always do, but I'll give them autonomy. If they feel like crap on one day, they don't got to go as heavy. If they feel better on one day, maybe they can push themselves. If they're an athlete that really loves lifting, which is for me, because I don't work with football, not that often do athletes love lifting. I love lifting. They don't love lifting. If they want to do extra stuff, they can stay extra and do extra stuff because that's just what they personally want to do, subjectively want to do. I don't want to put that on everyone else. So yeah, I've really changed over time. And I think initially I'd probably changed too much, where I gave too much autonomy, because dude, you come into the weight room, we're going to train, like you're here to train. You're not here to do anything else. You're here to train. So I think I gave too much autonomy at first. So it's like finding that balance. But yeah, that whole experience was me basically dropping volume a ton because they have way too much volume, trying to keep them a little fresher, and giving them some autonomy. Something interesting, dude. I work with a lot of foreign athletes, like women's golf team, women's tennis team, and the way that they've been brought up in sport is like, it seems to me that there's always been a coach that's told them exactly what to do, like they've never had any choice on themselves. So sometimes for me as a strength coach, it's like, I'll ask them like what exercise you want to do or what weight you want to do today, or how do you feel about this and that. And like, they don't even know how to reply, they don't even know how to, and that's crazy to me.
And you're saying that doesn't screw up your perfectly programmed 12-week undulating conjugate,
oh my God, yeah,
periodization program?
Dude, it's such a pain. Yes, it's such a pain for me. And this is probably I would say most strength and conditioning coaches I have such a hard time getting along with, because I'm like, that is so idiotic. What does that 12-week plan? What does that have anything to do with winning the game? I don't know. Please.
If you figure it out, let us know.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I wrapped up my thoughts on that.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's good. There's so much there, and all of it we agree with. And we talked to Zach Dakin a couple weeks ago, strength coach at TCU, and he said the same thing about kind of that long-term programming. And I wanted to get into that a little later in the podcast, because that's something that all three of us agree on. I do want to know though what a session looks like now when, and it could be, obviously it would be athlete specific, team specific. When an athlete comes in and starts with you and gets going from warm up to kind of completion, first of all, is there a conversation that's there that's, hey, do you feel crummy? Hey, do you feel good? Can we push it today? How's practice been? Is there anything that you kind of judge, that level of fatigue on early on? If there is, what is that? And then after that, kind of what does that next hour or so look like with you?
Yeah. Okay. Really tough to answer because it's so different with each and every team. And I'm so spread out with teams at the university, but, and then also with the COVID stuff, like I have a hard time playing these games that I used to play for warmups because they want like social distancing, all that stuff, but that stuff's kind of going, it's kind of going away, or at least less strict now. But yeah, so they'll come in. Okay. If we talk about like, dude, an athlete comes in and it's like, hey, how do you feel today? Or like, I read this once. I'm not going to call anyone out, but like I read this once. They were like, if you're a strength coach and you're not asking an athlete, how do you feel today? How much food did you eat last night? How many hours did you sleep? How many this and this and this? Then you're not doing your job, whatever. And I was like, dude, there's no way I'm asking an athlete that every session. How annoyed would they get, you know? And how in their head would they get to? And then they might just start lying to me if I'm like, how many hours of sleep did you get? And they're like, oh, I got 4 hours. And then I'm like, dude, what's wrong with you? The next day they're going to be like, I got 8, and they only got 2. You know, they're just going to lie to me. So it's like those type of things. I've had experiences for myself where I'm going into a session and I feel like crap. I feel like I just want to go home and do nothing. And a men's golfer comes by and he's like, yo, let's play some spike ball. I play spike ball for 10 minutes and I'm like, dude, let's freaking squat heavy. I'm ready to go. You know? So like you can also shift that pretty fast. If you get in like, let's just say in a warm up that you get going with, and usually for me, it's like spike ball or some stupid game we play. So at the same time, when you have an athlete and it's like, hey, how do you ask them those questions? I think realize that you can also change that pretty fast, you know, if you can get the environment right. So anyways, I'll answer the question now is like, let's just say off season, if I had it my way, athlete would come in and it's like, for the warm up, we're just going to play some game. Probably 5-10 minute game. It's a spike ball game. It's like med ball, tennis, beach ball, volleyball, something natural, get you moving, something competitive, like keep things fun. And then, I mean, we might do that on one day, but if I know that they're kind of beat up from something, we might do like dynamic stretching, static stretching, stuff like that. Really depends how I feel because I'm the one running it. And then it's like, off season, you probably go in, you do something explosive, sprinting, jumping, med ball throws, and then go into maximal strength if that's what we're after that day, whatever exercise it is. And then would be just assistance work. And usually with females, I would do total body training. With guys that are stronger, I would not do total body training because they're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to, I think if you're training multiple days a week, you're a guy and you're training full body, you're breaking down so much tissue that you don't have the amount of time to recover unless you're on drugs. You don't have the amount of time to recover after a session. If you're a female, you're lifting a lot less loads. There's a lot less damage occurring, muscular damage happening, demand on your nervous system that it's just a basic thing you guys would understand. Like as you get more, as you push more force out, as you do more volume in the weight room, whatever, it takes a lot more to recover from. And guys who are stronger, who are more explosive, they can get a lot of work done that if you're going to do a full body session, you probably only want to train 3 days a week. If you're doing a full body session, you're training 5 days a week, every single day, it's just too much. So yeah, with females, with males, it differs a little bit depending on how strong they are or how much the energy effort they can give within the session, how much volume they can push out. But yeah, that's basically how it is. It's kind of hard for me to answer. If I could talk about our women's soccer program, we have something called Fit for 90. I don't know if you guys heard of that. It's like subjective questionnaire they fill out every day, like how many hours they slept, all these things. And it only works because coach never punishes them. You know, they're going to be honest, because if they put on there that they slept 2 hours and then coach is all pissed and punishes them, they're not going to put 2 hours anymore. You know, they're going to lie. So they have to be honest. And there's no punishment. So they are honest. At least we think they're honest enough on that. And then we can also track the training load. You get the amount of how long the training was, their own subjective RPE, and then you get an arbitrary number. Same thing from the weight room. You get a length of time. If it was a 20-minute lift, you can get the RPE, and then that calculates a number. So you can look at training loads weekly or monthly and see, maybe you can sometimes line that up with injuries or something like that. So that's a way to track it. But I'm so spaced out with teams that the only team that really does something like that, which I think is huge, is women's soccer. Any other team would be too much for me to manage to try to track all that stuff. But yeah, And just to play it safe, because I say I'm so spread out, I don't want to make that sound like an excuse. Just to play it safe, I just do lower volume pretty much all the time. Lower volume than most coaches would do. I'm not doing very rarely, it would be like off season, I would do like a 5x5 at 80% plus load or something like that. I'm just not doing that. I don't think they need that volume. At least the teams I work with, because and for the most part, maximal strength is not a big factor. If I'm talking football athletes, like being close to the ball, like linemen or something, yes, maximal strength is very important. Maybe post players in basketball, maximal strength is important. But a point guard, no. Shooting guard, no. A swimmer, no. Like maybe a sprinter in the pool or something like that. But like you got to look at each individual athlete and be like, do they really need this much volume and this much intensity on these lifts? And often I think we could say no. So let's train them and get them stronger, because getting stronger is freaking easy. I think it's very easy with college athletes. Just do it lower volume, you know? Like, and then here's the pressure. If you get pressured from coach and they're like, we need to lift 5 days a week and we need to lift 1 hour every day. I think now with the amount of time I've been here, because coaches will say that. I could be like, no, I could actually get them all stronger in 20 minutes a week. Why don't we do that and keep them fresh? But then if a coach isn't on board and they say, no, we need him to get mentally tough or we need him to get like this, it's like, dude, that is so idiotic. That's not working. If anything, we're making these athletes worse, and you're shooting yourself in the foot, because you're going to lose more games because we're fatiguing the athletes and then they're going to get injured, and they're going to be slower. So, yeah, dude, I just think we're doing way too much work all the time, of the wrong work, because athletes are not giving 100%. They're giving 70%, and we just add up the volume over time with that. So if we could get people to go 100% and do lower volume, I think it'll be better.
Now, I think it was from one of your podcasts you talked about, like, generally speaking, that like an athlete going into college is going to be slower leaving college, even with like 4 years of strength and conditioning in the middle of that. Is that because of the volume? Is that because of the practices? Is that because of aging? What are some of the factors?
Yeah, I don't remember saying that, but I think well, maybe I did say that. Yes, I think it is volume, dude. I think like the if you're playing a power sports, like most sports are, like basketball, soccer, football, something like that, and it depends on the speed of your sport actions. If you're just practicing at 70% for 20 hours a week, what are you doing? There's no way you're getting faster. There is no possible way you're enhancing speed, because you're never pushing your speed. So yeah, I think everyone, if we had a way of tracking this, I think we could find that they are getting slower. So I think if you're always given 70, that's just an assumption on my end. I bet that's not all athletes. I think the only real speed development time you're getting is when you play the game, is when you play an actual game against another opponent. But even in our world as strength coaches, if we're saying we're going maximal speed day or something, and I'm training a basketball player, are they motivated to sprint in a straight line as fast as possible? I don't know. Are they? Like, if I'm most basketball dudes don't care at all. I mean, I don't train the guys right now. I train the girls. But it's like, I could get them so warmed up and so ready to go. I could even time the thing. And I know some of them just wouldn't care. They'd be like, I'd rather have a ball in my hand. That's how I'm going to sprint faster, or a soccer player. Do they really want to sprint in a straight line as fast as possible? And then we can educate them about how it's enhancing their speed. But hey, maybe for them, they only really connect with playing a game, going as fast as possible in a game. I just don't know the answer to that. I think go back to you saying like our 12-week undulation plan, whatever. It's like this idea we have of like the perfect physical development, but the brain is always influencing the physical development. And if the brain is not engaged, the brain doesn't care at all because the athlete doesn't connect with strength and conditioning, then it's not really working. And I bet you that's a lot of athletes that we're working with. So yeah, going back to they're probably leaving slower. Probably that, yes, the volume, probably injuries too, probably a lot of lifting in a weight room with high volume stuff. That doesn't make you faster. It makes you faster if you're a newbie, but if you're already decently strong, it's probably not making you faster. So yeah, I wish there was a way to measure that, but I bet you a lot of athletes are leaving slower than when they got in.
I think it was in like the fourth podcast you put out on sports science that you were talking about it. And I heard it and it clicked because like we tested 60s every year. I was a college baseball player and I was slower by the time I was done. And I was like a speed guy coming in. Like I was fast. And like, I'm finally feeling like as fast as I was when I was 18 and at 31. And it just clicked. And I was like, that is so accurate across the board with like looking at the athletes that I was around when I was in college. Like we all got slower. Like none of us got faster. And, you know, granted, we were at a small division school in Ohio, and we didn't have a strength and conditioning coach. We had a guy that, here was the paper, and then he left for 12 weeks until he gave us another paper. So it was like, all right. But yeah, that clicked with me. And, you know, just thinking about that, do you find that the athletes that have a base of training going into your programs versus the athletes that like haven't touched the barbell ever, there's a difference in like what they're getting out of the weight room now that you've kind of shifted to more of a lower intensity, like consistently giving them enough of what they need?
Yeah.
Between
Dude,
those those two groups, I guess.
Yes, I think the ones. Well, I don't know if I'm going to answer this the way you wanted, but I think the ones coming in that like have a huge background of lifting, whatever. Like now here's the problem. If I work with a whole team of 30 people, there are no way 30 people are going to love what we're doing. You know, there are no way they're all going to be behind it and be excited about it every single day. Maybe, hopefully I get most of them, but I'm sure some of them are like, screw this. That's just the nature of working with so many athletes at once. So if I'm approaching it that way, if I'm approaching it as a way saying, I know a lot of you probably don't love the weight room, so we're going to go lower volume, lower intensity, you know, keep you fresh, whatever. The person that's in the weight room that loves the weight room is probably going to be like, dude, I don't like this, you know. They might not tell me. They probably won't tell me. They'll probably say it in the locker room or say it to somebody else, you know. But it's like I would look at it and say, like, you're here to play the sport, you know. If you're a basketball player, you're here to play basketball. And do like, are you trying to cover up a problem with your basketball by being in the weight room more? You know, are you trying to cover it up with a physical development thing? Because that's just not going to work. I think you see it more with football players. The football players that are in the weight room all the time are usually the guys that sit on the bench. You know, they're not really that good at football. They love the weight room, and it's like, okay, maybe you should stop spending so much time in the weight room and spend more of your efforts on the field developing something out there. So yeah, if an athlete comes in and they're really into lifting and all this stuff, if they come in and they're really into lifting and really into like isolated type running drills or form technique drills and all this stuff, they probably won't like me because I don't do a lot of that stuff. You know, I pretty much leave it alone. I'm like, your body moves the way it moves, and who am I to say like you need to behave this way or you need to act this way? I just don't think I'm smart enough to know. I don't think anyone is smart enough to know, but yet we're going to say that here's the perfect sprint technique for every person. I just think it's garbage. Or here's the perfect way to cut. So yeah, I think if anything, I don't think I'm answering your question the way you wanted at all, but if an athlete comes in and they have a huge background of lifting and love lifting and like, I don't think they're really going to see it eye to eye with the way that I'm running things, but that's okay with me because yeah, that's just how it is, man. That's how it is. I would rather that I have that one athlete who's like, man, I really wish I could do more. We could do more of these drills and stuff. And maybe I've had athletes approach me and I go and do it for them. You know, I'll go do some dumb drills that they want to do. I don't think it's helping them at all, but hey, their own brain thinks that it's helping them. So I'm going to go do it with them. If it's not taking any too much time off my table, I'll go run it through them, but I'm not going to make everyone do it. If they want to do an A skip because they think the A skip is helping their sprint technique, sure, let's go do an A skip. But I'm not about to tell the whole team we're all doing A skips. You're all going to get it. Cause I know probably 90% of them would be like, dude, why am I doing an A skip? I never run like this with a basketball in my hand, you know, or I'm dribbling a basketball. So, yeah, when we're getting a little bit into the subjective perception side, which can go a million different directions. So that's always something, I guess we talk about like the art of coaching, you know, like every athlete has a different perception of the way things go. And sometimes just give them what they want, as long as it's not harming them. Give them what they want, but don't make everyone else do what they want, you know?
Well, it's like those speed ladders, right? Everybody wants to do speed ladders. Everybody thinks it makes them better at speed, and it has nothing to do with any of that. But every once in a while, you got to throw speed ladders in there because kids like it.
Yeah.
I want to put a couple thoughts together here, Jake, for one question. If you don't mind, give me a second to kind of explain this. So you talked earlier about how if you could just have every athlete for 20 minutes a week, right, you could make them better. You could make them more powerful. You can make them stronger because, you know, if you get them training with intent, you get them, you know, understanding why they're doing what they're doing, they'll be able to make progress that way, right? Other thought is you've got this huge following, this awesome following online from your vertical jump protocol and your hypertrophy cluster programs. And it's so cool to see on your social media. I mean, you throw up people doing stuff from those programs every day. Did that thought of getting kids better in a short amount of time kind of inspire the online programming? I mean, is it kind of, is the vertical jump protocol and hypertrophy clusters how you would train everybody if you had that ability to do it like that? Or did that just come out of what you love to do and you're in there in the weight room and you're jumping and landing and doing hypertrophy a different way and you care about aesthetics and you're actually honest that you care about aesthetics when most people would say they don't care about it, when I think it's something us three sitting here very much care about.
Yeah.
So did one inspire the other, or are those two different ideas?
Yeah. Okay. I wouldn't say like 20 minutes a week. That was for like exaggeration. I don't think I would.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could make someone stronger in that short amount of time, but it's like, I mean, that was just for a coach that would say, we got 4 hours to lift, so we're going to lift for 4 hours. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Do I need 4 hours? Do we need to put this volume on them? Probably not. So, but anyways, yeah, hypertrophy clusters, vertical jump protocol. These are like, if you want to train for hypertrophy to get bigger. This is like very, very different than how I approach the university setting, because I'm saying like, I think the athletes are overloaded with volume. And if I did hypertrophy clusters, I would overload them further with volume. That would not be good.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work like that, you know? And vertical jump protocol, I don't really care how high the basketball players jump. They jump high enough, you know? They need to score the ball. Does vertical jump have really much to do with that? No, it doesn't. Especially like 18-year-old kid. If you're trying to develop a kid that's like 12 years old and just an awful athlete, then yeah, that thing's probably going to work. But if you're 18, 19, 20, whatever, 22, you want to get a little edge on it and you really love lifting, then sure, let's go and do a program like that. But how many athletes really love lifting and want to dedicate that time to it? I think when we talk about the overloading with volume, it causes stress to the whole organism. You know, the whole organism is stressed. There's no way they're going to be that excited about lifting because they're just stressed out. So I initially made hypertrophy clusters because I was like, how can me personally, like, how can I train for hypertrophy and not just become a big useless bodybuilder that can't move at all? Because bodybuilders are not athletic at all. If you ever see, I think probably mostly all of them, gain a bunch of muscle, but you're not athletic at all. So hypertrophy clusters was made so that you could train with higher quality, but still get muscle gain. Because often if you want to get muscle gain, you need to train to failure or very close to failure. But hypertrophy clusters was based on a study that was done where they found similar muscle gains, but also like a lot better power gains and actual strength gains when you train at higher quality in the weight room. But yeah, high volume training program. I'm not putting that on a lot of athletes I train with. I will put it on the men's golfers right now because they just want to get big. You know, honestly, I got a few men's golfers that want to gain muscle. They care how they look. So I'm like, they love 8x5. So I'm like, dude, let's do 8x5. Let's go. But if I tell a female golfer or a female athlete, you got 8 sets of 5, they'd be like, what? I don't want to do 8 sets. You know, it's like, okay, we won't do it then. Let's do 3 or 4 sets. But and then vertical jump protocol was just for vertical jump development. You know, that's all it's really for. But is there any athletes really out there that just need vertical jump development if you're in like a team sport, power sport? Maybe if you're in a track and field event, I guess, because that's a very isolated physical thing.
Mm-hmm.
But most of my sports, team sports, no, you just don't need that. So yeah, those were more created for my own interests. And I think there's a lot of coaches and a few athletes out there who've taken interest in it. And these are the ones that love training. They find me online because they love training. But at the college level I'm at, I just know there's not a lot of people that love training. They just don't. So I'm not gonna push high volume 90-minute workouts on them. They just don't need it. They can go 30-minute workouts, 45-minute workouts, and that's enough for them.
Can you give us, without giving, again, I don't want you to get too much into it. I don't want you to give all of it away. But I had a kid at Baldwin Wallace when I was working the other day said, we were doing something, and on our third block of training, he pulled me over. He said, hey man, you heard of Jake Tuura in the hypertrophy clusters he does? And it was like 2 or 3 days ago. And I said, well, he's actually coming on the podcast in a couple of days. So I'll talk to him about it. But I had heard about it previously from following you now for a little bit. But what's kind of the general idea of the hypertrophy cluster? I know it's, more sets, less reps. Are you looking for max strength output? Are you looking for max weight at each set? Are you building up, weight in each one? What do the hypertrophy clusters themselves kind of look like if we were to go do them tomorrow?
Yeah. So if okay, first of all, you got to be interested in gaining muscle. So really, and that's would be for an athlete. If you're just interested in gaining muscle, go ahead and do any bodybuilding program. Anything will work. Gaining muscle is freaking easy. Or training to gain muscle is easy. It's the eating and the sleeping and everything that people can't be consistent with. Because you gotta sleep enough, you gotta eat enough, you gotta manage stress in life, so you can go back to the gym and train high volume again and do it again and again and again. And that's what people lack, why they can't see results from the gym. So anyways, that's bodybuilding, gaining muscle in general, very simple. But if you're an athlete, you don't just want to gain muscle and become, because often you'll just gain a bunch of muscle with high volume training that's pushing you into the ground because the sets are taking close to failure. It's going to make you slower. It's going to make you way worse at your sport because you're just going to be slower. Not a good thing. So hypertrophy clusters is, let's just say you're doing 4 sets of 10, which would be like a tradition, like a back squat, 4 sets of 10 at whatever, 65, 70% load. 4 sets of 10, 2 minutes rest, 3 minutes rest, something like that. Let's say you get done with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reps. Those are all pretty clean reps. And then rep 6, rep 7, rep 8, rep 9, rep 10, they all look like trash and they get worse and worse and worse. And the speed slows down. You probably, if you're doing a back squat, you might start using your low back. You see compensations happen. You see all this garbage happen, but it's pretty good for hypertrophy because you need to train close to failure. So you get done with that set, you rest 3 minutes, you repeat it again. So that's the idea behind hypertrophy. But a study was done by Jonathan Oliver and others, and I don't know what journal Jonathan Oliver is part of like the NSCA, where he took the 4 sets of 10 and he did 8 sets of 5 instead, the same exact weight. And instead of resting 2 minutes, they only rested 60 seconds. So just imagine you only doing 5 reps. You never get to the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 reps, which look like trash. You just stop the set and you rest a minute and then do it again, stop the set, rest a minute. So probably by like the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th set, they might be looking a little different because you're accumulating a little bit of fatigue with each one, but the quality of rep is higher on everything. So 8 by 5, that's 40 reps. You just did 40 reps at whatever, at the 65% intensity or 70% intensity of super high quality reps, or you did 40 reps with the traditional way and about 20 of those were garbage reps. So if you're, and then his study concluded it was 12 weeks long. They found similar lean mass gains between the groups. So they gained pretty much equal amounts of muscle, but the ones who did hypertrophy clusters got faster in a vertical jump. I think they did a vertical jump test, they did a squat power test, bench press power test, and they got stronger in the squat and the bench press. So it's a way to train for hypertrophy. It's like getting bigger, stronger, faster, like all at once, just doing 8 sets of 5 instead of 4 sets of 10. And if you're doing the 8 sets of 5, I'm talking about the sets need to be taken like fairly close to failure. There's this idea in hypertrophy training of effective reps for hypertrophy. This was by Chris Beardsley, some other guys, where if you, let's just say you're doing like, you put 65% of your load on a back squat and you just did 1 rep, you need to be within 5 reps of failure for that repetition to stimulate hypertrophy, because you need it to slow down a little bit on the way up. You need a lot of motor unit recruitment, and you need the repetition to slow down on the way up, which means you're getting closer to failure. So if you put 65% load on the bar and you just do 1 rep, that's not stimulating hypertrophy. You're not getting bigger from that set. So if you put 65% on and you do 5 reps, you might have 1 or 2 reps that are slowing down enough where you're getting a hypertrophy stimulus. Now, if you're doing a traditional repetition way or traditional hypertrophy way, you're getting a lot of reps that are stimulating hypertrophy because you're training so close to failure. But if you're doing the 8 sets instead of the 4 sets and you're keeping it higher quality, you're still getting a number of repetitions that are stimulating hypertrophy. So I think that could be a reason why they saw similar lean mass gains within the program. And for myself, and I guess people that, not the athletes at the university for the most part, but other athletes I've worked with, like people gain muscle on it, you know, you don't need to train grinding. You don't need to kill yourself in the weight room. So yeah, it's simple enough. I mean, if you're going to do 4 sets of 10 back squat at whatever load, just do 8 sets of 5 and you can cut the rest down halfway of what it would have been anyways. So simple enough way to train for hypertrophy while keeping, I guess, some of your athletic qualities.
I think for a simple way to, think about that is, some of our athletes are listening, think about doing a set of 20 push-ups and how bad those last couple of push-ups look if that's a stretch for you to be able to do that. Are we really getting anything out of those last 5 that look like trash? So if you're an athlete kind of listening to this, think about how that affects your body and what your body feels like in those movement patterns as you're pushing past good movement patterns. we're not really getting the intended benefit from that exercise. So I think that's a really good takeaway that our athletes can pull from that little snippet there.
Yeah, one thing I'd say too is I do hypertrophy clusters, because I've had this question. I do hypertrophy clusters on squats, deadlifts, split squats, like bench press, rows, pull-ups. I do it on like the big compound exercises. But if you're gonna do like a bicep curl, don't do hypertrophy clusters. It doesn't matter. The speed of a bicep curl doesn't matter one bit. It's not going to do anything to detract from your athletic performance, because you're only stimulating the bicep. And the bicep is a pretty small muscle compared to everything else in your body. We're talking about like the global strain that it has on your nervous system. You know, if your nervous system is getting a huge stimulus because you're stimulating your legs and moving super slow and the reps are really grinding, that's probably going to have some negatives. But if you're doing an isolation exercise, you can pretty much go to failure and you're not going to see these negatives. But anytime you're doing a compound exercise and putting a ton of force, putting a lot of weight on your back or lifting a lot of load, that is a huge stress on the body. And if you can keep those reps higher quality, that's probably going to be better in the long run. But if you're doing an isolation exercise, you can get closer to failure, like really close to failure. I don't really think it matters in terms of making now. Technique always matters, because if your technique is going to trash, then just don't do that. But I'm talking about if technique is pretty solid, you can do an isolation exercise, a tricep push down, a bicep curl, a delt raise, and go to failure. And it's not going to destroy you the next day like taking a squat set to failure would.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know, and we will be messing with those. How about, we've seen your last couple, let's say 4 or 5 podcasts, the Jacked Athlete podcasts have been on knee health and then the patellar tendon. And you had talked about how, over quarantine, you spent a ton of time looking into that and you really felt like you learned a lot about it. You've also talked in the past about kind of a history with jumper's knee that you've had. Bring those kind of together, if you could, for us. What is it about the tendons that interests you so much? And how were you able to get over the jumper's knee? And then we'll kind of transition into isometrics a little bit after this.
Yeah, dude, what's interesting is I had Jill Cook on. Jill Cook, one of my favorite podcasts I did, where I talked about tendon issues. And she said 50% of issues that are tendons that come to her are not tendon issues. It's something else. It's some surrounding structure. So anytime you get an athlete, I got patellar tendonitis, I got Achilles tendonitis, I got bicep tendonitis, whatever. It's like, well, if we go off what she said, it's like 50% of the time that's not even the case. So it's like it's overdiagnosed all the time. But the good thing is, most of the time those injuries you really just have to look at physical preparation and load management. Like you probably did too much load and that's why the area hurts. Or you need to physically prepare better for what you did. So they kind of go hand in hand. You can't just overload the volume on somebody that's not prepared for it. Anyways, the why I'm so interested in jumpers knee, the patellar, tendonitis. We can't use the term tendonitis. You didn't use the term tendonitis, but people use the term tendonitis all the time. Tendonitis would be a short-term acute inflammation thing. If you say I have patellar tendonitis and you've had it for 4 weeks, you don't have patellar tendonitis anymore. That's a short-term inflammation. It's idiotic to use that phrase, just like it's idiotic to say injury prevention. It's idiotic to use all these terms that people like to use. I don't see why we still use them, because how are we going to further our knowledge when we're using the wrong words? So the phrase is patellar tendinopathy, because tendinopathy just means a general dysfunction, general pain in the area, or something wrong with the tendon. If you say tendonitis, it's about inflammation. If you say tendinosis, that's about degenerative changes. But we don't really know what's happening in tendons. That's why this is one reason why I did so much work on tendons, because we know so little about tendons. It's so interesting because there's so many people doing work. There's so much stuff that's been written, but the people that are at the top still admit they don't know what's going on. So that's why I found it so interesting. There's a way for me to stand out, because I can put out a resource that is very valuable because we're so clueless about what's happening. Why I'm so interested in jumpers knee, though, I wanted to play college basketball. I did not do it my first year. I had this girlfriend and I kind of I just didn't do it. So then the next year I wanted to play. I did this vertical jump program in the summer. I think I got my first dunk ever. And then I got terrible jumpers knee afterwards. I couldn't, it was just awful. So I had that jumpers knee for years, dude. I went to PT. I went to, I got doctors. I got x-ray, I got MRI on it. I got surgery on it. Nothing worked. I had this for like 2 years. I had jumpers knee for 2 years. I couldn't jump. All I wanted to do was play basketball. I couldn't do it. So that's why I care so much about it. And then my process getting back, I squatted super heavy, Bulgarian style, every single day, maxed out. That decreased my jumper's knee, or pain in the patellar tendon. And then I started doing isometrics, and that just pretty much got rid of it. But the thing is, when you have jumper's knee, it can always come back, because the tendon issues are always a load issue. If you go from, even for me, if I sit on the couch, let's say, here's what happened in quarantine, because now I have patellar tendinopathy in my left knee. Over quarantine, I was out at my parents' place in Northwest Wisconsin, and it was like wintertime. So I was outside dunking. I was dunking every single day, and I got frostbite on my toes because I was dunking outside. It was freezing outside. And I couldn't do anything for like 2 weeks. I just had to sit there. Couldn't train my lower body, couldn't do anything. And then one day I just said, screw this, I'm gonna go dunk again. And then I went to dunking every single day. I changed my load on my patellar tendon from doing nothing to jumping every single day. And then I got patellar tendinopathy again. So anytime you change the loads too fast, the tendon does not like it, and the tendon will have degenerative changes. The tendon will get inflamed. Something's going to happen where it's going to be in pain, and then you need to get on a loading program to help that. So when you have a jumper's knee issue, it's always about changing load too fast. If you go from being couch potato to jumping a ton, that's not good. Just like an Achilles issue, if you go from sitting on the couch to doing a bunch of sprinting, it's not good for the Achilles. You need to build that up slowly. You need to physically prepare for the activity. And then once those things happen, it's about training the muscles around the area. So if you have a patellar tendinopathy, the brain is going to shut down your quads, and the brain is going to shut down your calves. It's just going to shut down those muscle areas. So one way to get the brain to get that to not happen get those back on board is to do strength training, because strength training is pain-free. The brain will not shut it down. It's actually going to be a good thing, because you can do isometrics, you can do a heavy isotonics. It's not going to hurt the patellar tendon. So you do something like a leg extension, you do like a split squat, those type of exercises for the quad. You do a seated calf raise for the soleus, a standing calf raise for the gastroc. You just strength train the area of the quad and the calf, and that's good for the patellar tendon. But yeah, it always circles back to not changing loads too fast. So those are the basic ideas for someone to try to avoid jumper's knee, but it pretty much exists for all tendons. Don't go from doing nothing to doing a bunch of activity, and a bunch of activity that is fast, because it's fast activities where the tendon has to act store and release fashion. That is super demanding on tendons. If you lift a heavy weight in the weight room, it is not demanding on tendons really much at all. If you do an isometric, like an isometric lunge, there's pretty much no load on the tendon. It's very healthy for the tendon, but it's not damaging the tendon at all. It can actually help to heal areas of degeneration within the tendon. So it's interesting to look at tendons and say, doing an isometric is pretty much no tendon load. Doing lifting, heavy weightlifting is not much tendon load. But when you go jumping and when you go sprinting, huge tendon loads. So anytime an athlete needs to get ready for season, you cannot get ready for season by doing heavy lifting or isometrics. You need to get into the faster type motions and build those up slowly over time. So once you have a tendon issue, it can always come back. You're always prone to have it again. So it's good to be smart about those things.
One big thing I think we should take from this talk is having a girlfriend gives you jumper's knee, and doing isometrics can help that. Is that right? Is that pretty much what we're taking from?
Well, yes. If you got a girlfriend and you get lazy and don't do anything, yes. And then it's like, well, I'm gonna go live my dreams again and be a basketball player. Well, then you're gonna get jumpers knee.
Right, there you go.
Yeah.
Great transition to isometrics. James and I've talked about it on a couple different podcasts. Quarantine, we kind of, I don't know what you say, found it. We found the benefits of them kind of during quarantine. We were doing basically half-hour workouts every morning, live on Instagram and Facebook for our members of the gym and our athletes to work out along with us to make sure that they were hopefully doing something. And if that was all they were doing, it was better than doing nothing all day. And so we started doing some isos in there, and then started to look into it a little more, found your episode with Dr. Tommy John talking about isometrics. Went and listened to Tommy's podcast on isometrics. I'd already mentioned Zach Dakin, who we had. He talked a lot about doing isometrics, but basically as a transitional move between a single arm, what was it, James? I believe a dumbbell reverse lunge to a front rack barbell reverse lunge. And that's kind of how he connected the two exercises.
He uses them a lot in that like 5-week, like onboarding phase for his athletes that are coming from somewhere else into their baseball program. So like every day they're doing front heel elevated split squat holds, various times. They kind of work their way from like 10 seconds to 30 seconds that go back down and then start loading it up. At the end of the 5 weeks, they start going into, I guess you could call it his more, traditional or advanced, baseball off-season training.
That's right. Yeah. And what we loved about how you approach it is 3 to 5 minutes a day, total volume, something I've started trying to do the last couple of weeks. You talk about the split squat, you talk about the single leg stand, which is also something we've been doing for a couple months now. Talk to us a little bit about that, the benefits you found from that. Also the dead hang you mentioned kind of before we started recording, another one that we've been doing tons of. Seems like the low hanging fruit, seems like it's easy to get to, seems like it's one of those exercises that have a ton of, return on the investment. You get a ton out of it and you can really do it anywhere. And that was really where it found us, is because we could do it. I could sit here talking to you and be doing the isometrics. What are, outside kind of the knee health benefits that you've received? Why are you so consistent with them? And why is it something that you do all the time?
Yeah. So, let's talk about the knee health thing. So we have the patellar tendinopathy, which is like the pain in the patellar tendon, but then you also have patellofemoral pain, which is like general knee pain in the front of the knee. And a lot of people have patellofemoral pain. They do not have patellar tendinopathy. You get the patellar tendinopathy from jumping super high and doing it over and over, or changing jumping loads very fast. You have to be a pretty good athlete to get the jumper's knee, because you have to put a lot of force through the patellar tendon. So a lot of times, going back to the misdiagnosis, people will be misdiagnosed and say you have patellar tendinopathy, or even worse, they say patellar tendonitis. They'll say you have patellar tendonitis, but they really have patellofemoral pain. They just have knee pain around the knee joint. And the thing with the knee pain around the knee joint is going to happen to like a worse athlete, or someone who does not have, has a problem at the hip or a problem at the foot. So if we talk about the isometrics, the single leg stand, I think, okay, going back to me when I started doing those isometrics and I saw knee pain relief, I don't think I had patellar tendinopathy at the moment. I think I had patellofemoral pain, because it's kind of hard. At the time, I didn't know how to distinguish. And that's why they work so well for me, because my knees were hurting, but it was patellofemoral pain. I know it was patellofemoral pain. So the single leg stand, you're working the ankle. You're basically working strength, endurance of the ankle and the hip. And Tommy John will say that it connects the ankle with the hip. That's kind of voodoo to some people. Be like, oh, what do you mean? So I just say it's working strength, endurance of everything around the foot and everything around the hip. Because if you stand on one leg and bring the other leg up and you're already burning after like 30 seconds, it's like, dude, that's a problem. You should be able to hold this thing for 3 minutes. You should be able to hold this thing for 3, 4, 5 minutes. And then if you bring the opposite leg up as high as you can, you're also getting the hip flexor strength endurance there. So I think, my opinion, if you enhance strength endurance of the hip, strength endurance of the foot by doing that type of exercise, a single leg stand, you're going to be a lot less likely to have knee pain, have the patellofemoral pain, because you have a healthier or a better functioning hip and a foot. And then the isometric lunge takes you in like the most exaggerated gait pattern you can be in. One of the problems with getting your conditioning from running is you're always in a very upright position. You're always in a very advantageous position. But if you get in the iso lunge, you're at a very disadvantageous. You're at like the most disadvantageous position. So you can enhance work capacity, strength endurance in the bottom position, which I think is huge. Because anytime we talk about injury reduction or something, we talk about strength at length, having muscles strong, but having them be strong at a long length. And if you're only ever doing like running for your conditioning, you're always at a more like a shortened position, at a advantageous position. But if you get an iso lunge, you're in a disadvantageous, and you just hang out there, and it freaking sucks. But you can develop strength endurance at the foot and at the hip, and you can connect the two. And then you also get length at the rectus femoris muscle at the hip, which if the rectus femoris muscle, for whatever reason, gets kind of locked up, that's something that can cause knee pain as well. So I think being consistent with those, anyone who would have, they think they have jumper's knee, they think they have patellofemoral pain, why would you not do those every single day? Just do them every single day. You don't even need to go to a doctor. You don't need to go to a PT. You don't need to go to any of this stuff. Try that for a few weeks, and I think your knee's probably going to feel better. And then you might find you don't need to spend the thousands of dollars on the medical route. I could be wrong because I'm not a doctor, but it would be worth a shot. So those are really the benefits. I think in a training setting, it can be a challenge for people, and it can be a healthy thing, because if we're taking an in-season athlete like a basketball player or like a soccer player and they're on the field, just think of what they're doing. They're really only doing fast motions. The fast motions, which are making their tendons very stiff, which can be good for performance, but their muscle might not be that strong because they're not lifting weights. The muscle can kind of get weaker. So if you go into an isometric, let's say an isometric lunge, the muscle is locked up. The tendon is able to actually lengthen out a little bit, and because of viscoelastic properties, and the muscle is pulling on the tendon over and over, so the muscle is shortening a little bit. So we're getting a high muscle stimulus, but you're also getting a health stimulus at the tendon. So it's actually kind of giving you what you don't get from sports. So if you're like an in-season basketball athlete, any athlete who's in season, who's in a power sport, doing isometrics in season is probably going to be good for health. I can't prove it, because it always comes back to volume. It always comes back to fatigue. And if you're doing more and more and more, you're probably fatiguing yourself more and more, which might not be good. But the benefit of isometrics is you can do them and kill yourself and not really pay for it the next day. If you do any type of lifting weight in the weight room and kill yourself, you're going to pay for it the next day or the next 2 days. But you can do isos and come in the next day and feel fine. You can go in an iso lunge and absolutely murder yourself and be like, dude, this hurts so bad. Go 3 minutes straight or 4 minutes straight and fall over on the floor. And then a few hours later, you're like, I don't even feel anything, But if you lift in weights, there's no way that's happening. So those are a few benefits, I think, from the isometrics is, you can really work the opposite of what you get in a power speed type movement, which probably is good for health.
Yeah, those are awesome. And we also see that a lot of athletes we've worked with after, James, what would you say, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, that front leg starts going crazy. Or if we're doing a single leg stand, that other leg, the leg that's up starts to drop, and it gets down, below their hip, and it gets down below their knee, and it gets and that just tells us right there that it's something that we need to do more often, because they need to get better at it.
Yeah, I would say the only athletes that don't struggle with like 30 seconds as that minimum threshold, right? So the only athletes that don't struggle with 30 seconds are the athletes that we get every day, right? And that are doing it every day. Those are the only that are 30-second lunge, no problem, good, no wincing, no kickback, no nothing. But even kids that we see 2 times a week and we do it both times, and they don't do it on their own, like they still struggle getting to, good quality, like, that knee's almost touching the ground. Like they still struggle with 30 seconds at that, 15, 20 second mark, they're struggling. Even with doing it 2 times a week, they still struggle with it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like if you go max time ever and you stop it for a few months, it comes back pretty fast. Yeah. Initially seeing some people like go 15 seconds and fall over, it's like, wow, dude, that is not good. I think that was me at first. I think that was what I was going through at first. But I think since then, I've just been, I guess, more resilient ever since I've been implementing those over and over. It's just something I didn't know about. I think it's something a lot of people didn't know about, but it's so simple. One thing I would say about it, let's take like the isometric lunge. You can go for max time or just accumulate the time. But if you wanted to do it for, let's say, for tendon benefit, you would load it as heavy as possible and hold it for like 30 to 45 seconds. That was some research by Keith Barr, I guess Ebony Rio, all those researchers, where when they're doing isometrics for their tendons, they're only going about 30 to 45 seconds, and they're going pretty much as heavy as they can, hold it pretty much to failure, because that is when, if you just look at the tendon's a very stiff thing. If you hold an isometric contraction, the tendon molecules, the collagen molecules actually start to work individually. And when you have areas of degeneration which don't work well anymore, when you hold that isometric for 30 to 45 seconds, that the strong collagens, all the strong collagens, because everything has to work individually, they all relax. And at that 30 to 45 second period of time where you're pretty much like, it sucks for you, you're failing, that is when the weak collagens can feel the stimulus. That's the only time they can feel the stimulus. If you have a patellar tendinopathy, you have degeneration, you have weak collagens, disorganized collagens, because everything can get really messed up when you have pain there. If you have that problem in your patellar tendon and you're just jumping over and over and over, you're only using the strong collagens, and the strong collagens are compressing the weakened and disorganized collagens. That is not a good thing. So you're jumping over and over. You're causing more degeneration in the tendon. the way to reverse the degeneration is to do isometrics. You could do an isometric split squat. The best one is probably an isometric leg extension, and hold it for 30 to 45 seconds. And at that time, you get the biggest stress relaxations, what they call it. The strong collagens are relaxing. So that's the only time the weak collagens can feel the stimulus, and then they can lay down collagen in the direct, they can lay down collagen normally like it should be. So that's a way you can heal degeneration. And Keith Barr has shown this done this in a few studies where there's a tendon with degeneration, and then he does the isometrics multiple times per day on like a leg extension, and they MRI the thing 6 months later or something, and the degeneration is completely gone. So it is pretty powerful stuff to have that understanding of viscoelastic properties within the tendon, and to do the 30 to 45 seconds as much weight as you possibly can isometrics. Now, if people don't have the weights to do that, I asked Peter Malieris, he's another tendon researcher. I was like, what if you don't have any weights? And he was like, well, I think you can just hold it longer, because if you hold it longer, the stress relaxation will take a lot longer time. So maybe it takes 3 minutes, 4 minutes, something like that. If you hold an isometric lunge and go into failure, I bet you're still getting that stimulus in the weak collagens. So it is kind of powerful stuff for athletes who suffer with the jumper's knee, instead of being like, okay, you need to rest it and ice it and compress it and elevate it. It's like, well, let's actually train it harder than anything you've ever trained in your life. And this is going to suck really bad, but they need to be loaded. So for me, probably for you guys as strength coaches, we love to just load things as heavy as possible. So I think it's can be empowering things for people like us or for other athletes to know that you can actually train the area. You don't just have to like put a Band-Aid on it.
Does this have any crossover if like we're doing a dead hang and then you start like putting a weight belt on for a dead hang? Is there similar benefits for what's going on?
I don't know, because I'm not really that familiar with upper body stuff, because I've never really had upper body injuries. I know you're a baseball guy. I'm more like care about jumping and like sprinting type performance. So I really don't know about the upper bodies type stuff. And I mean, you probably get that with my podcast. Like, I never ask about upper body stuff because I just want big biceps and triceps. I don't care about throwing a ball fast.
Yeah. We have I have one guy, I won't, give out his name, but, professional athlete and came in with bicep tendonitis and some type of knee pain, whatever it was. But 2 sessions later, the knee pain's gone. But I'm just not as confident with the shoulder as I am with some of the lower half injuries. And like, we're doing all the movements he told me on the first orientation that he cannot do and will not do because it causes pain. 3 sessions later, we're doing all of those things. Yeah. And it's just like so cool to see this, the stuff that I'm learning from you guys, and CT's an awesome resource. He shares stuff all the time. So, most of, that stuff, I just wonder where else it translates up the chain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me of a screenshot I took. Jake, and we had a little conversation about it from your Instagram that just said load for anti-fragility, rest and ice for fragility. I mean, it just, makes sense for the patellar tendinopathy and patellar femoral pain. I mean, it just makes sense to, load it to strengthen it, not just sit around.
Yeah, dude. And let's go back to the loading argument, or like the physical preparation argument. If you have a patellar tendinopathy, or you have any tendinopathy and you're trying to get back to sport, how is that going to heal if you never do any activity on the thing? Like, you're just going to go, if you just rest it and ice it and then say, okay, I feel better, I'm going to go back to sport, it's just going to happen again, because it's not prepared to deal with the stresses of sport. You have to physically prepare it. And usually that process is, you have extreme pain in the tendon. Okay, let's do isometrics, then let's do isotonics, like heavy lifting, and then go back to storm release activities slowly, and then go back into sport. So it's this whole process that has nothing to do with resting and icing.
That's so funny. I had a conversation today with an athlete that I've been working with for a while, and he said a couple weeks ago, my groin's kind of bugging me, and he kind of talked around. I said, well, it's probably not that. Let's think about what else has been going on. And then he came back to me today, and he said, hey, CT, I went to see a chiro, and he said, turns out it's not my groin. I said, I know that, that's what I told you, but that's kind of out of my scope of practice. And I said, what did they say to do? And what is it, $150, $200 for a session? And he said, well, I just gotta relax. I gotta ice it and then heat it and then ice it, and then I should be good to go. And I said, does that make sense to you? Like, does that make sense that you can just do that and then go run and play your sport. And he was like, and a younger kid. So, I kind of felt for him, but he said, I guess. And I thought, all right, well, we got to talk about this a little more. I mean, but it's just so funny that people think that's the way to make it back into sport, right? It's just, I just gotta, 6 weeks, gotta be off it, then I'll be good to go. But I guess it says it somewhere in some book. But I have yet to read that book. Couple more things, Jake, want to ask you from just listening to the podcast. Been spending, the last couple of weeks really knocking them out. And James mentioned I'm sending clips all the time about stuff, man. And we love.
I always thought that was at 2 times speed, but now that we're talking to you, Jake, I think that's just normal speed that you're sending these clips over.
Yeah, man, this guy talks fast. So I'd send him some awesome clips, man, and send them out. We can put some of those kind of on the link when we put this up on our pages. But want to talk real quick. I think it was your second, and again, we'll kind of rip through these. So however little or however much you want to talk about these. I think your second podcast, you had a gentleman on who was talking about 1x20. And that was such an interesting idea for me. And he had mentioned 1x20, 1x14, 1x8. And I was kind of trying to figure out how to implement something like that. Could you talk a little bit about that, go into the kind of the 1x20 idea?
Yes. So for me, I hate 1x20. It does not work for me. And this is, I don't know if this would be you. Over quarantine, I went through Christian Thibodeau's neurotyping system, which if you guys would ever do it, I don't know, it was like $300, completely worth it. That thing will blow your mind. It's like multiple hours of a lecture. But he talks about 5 different neurotypes, and people will argue, is it completely correct or not? Dude, listen to the things, and then you can pretty much pick out each athlete you've ever seen. But for me, I'm a type 2B explosive athlete. I love high box jumps. I hate low box jumps. I like anything with a challenge. I like anything stupid and chaotic and potentially dangerous. I enjoy warming up with spike ball. I would not enjoy warming up with dynamic warm up like knee pulls and lunges and stuff. I like having a ton of variation. So if you gave me I did 5-3-1 once and I lasted 2 weeks and I was like, screw this, I'm not doing this. If I did 1x20, I would last maybe 2 days and I would be done with it because I need to do something else. But this is my brain type. It's based, you can take a test, you can see what yeah, and again, people will argue it's not completely correct, whatever. The different type of neurotransmitters you have, like I'm dopamine dominant. I need these challenges, these rewards. Someone who would do well with 1x20 would be like a type 3, a more control person, someone with higher cortisol, someone who wants like consistency in training, the same thing over and over. I hate the same thing over and over. But 1x20, it is, again, and I love lifting. I'm so familiar with lifting. Some athletes who are not that familiar with lifting, you can give them 1x20. It's fine. They're so inexperienced with lifting, give them anything, and it can be enough of a novel stimulus that maybe they'll stick with it or something like that. But 1x20, I have a PDF on my site that people can access. It's just for free. There's like 20 exercises you can hit to cover pretty much all the joint actions. I don't agree with it 100% because you're doing like a knee, banded knee drive and a banded paw back and I'm like, this has no stimulus on the body. What is this thing doing? I don't think it's really doing anything. But the things like squats, the compound movements, squats, deadlifts, split squats, whatever, do 20 reps, build strength, endurance, just like very low volume, basically one set to near failure, almost, or failure or at failure, and just progress it over time. Train 3 days a week, progress it every single day. Some people can get really strong on that if they can last through the monotony. But for some people, will freaking kill your motivation to train. Mm-hmm. That's me. But so it's like that. And then you can go down like I did in my program. It's 1x20, then 1x15, then 1x10. And I usually recommend that for someone who's like a newbie, if they want to get into hypertrophy clusters or vertical jump protocol. I'm like, if you've never lifted before, you got to do this because you're just so inexperienced. You don't need this type of training until you've done something like that. But you can do it like that. I do it with some teams right now. I'm doing it with like women's soccer, and some of them really, I think, well, I know that to do. They enjoy it because it's like you have that one set to failure, and then next week you try to beat it, and you're pretty much always able to beat it. And then you just do it over and over and over, vary the exercises over time. And also, dude, we're in the weight room 7 days a week, probably. We're training all the time. These athletes are training twice a week. Like if they're complaining about monotony or something, like, come on, you're training twice a week. Like, don't give me that. Try training 7 days a week and then be like that. But, Yeah, so that's kind of the ideas behind 1x20. Can be pretty effective. But for me, I get bored so fast. And also when I program for people, I get bored so fast. I'm doing the same thing over and over. And if I would ever get a comment of like, can we do something else? Can we do that? Whatever. I'm usually pretty quick to like get on their side, be like, sure, let's do it. So it's something that, can work well. Depends on the different brain type. But I think it really made me aware of, because actually, dude, I came up with that PDF, and then I listened to just Joel Smith's podcast with Christian Thibodeau talk about neurotyping, and he talked about 1x20 and was like, there's this one, most groups of athletes will hate 1x20. And at the moment I was like, man, screw you. I just spent months trying to write this 1x20 PDF. But now I'm like, well, I agree 100% because I would not last on 1x20. So it's got to be the right setting, got to be the right person. But low volume, a way to make consistent progress over time. Some people will love it. Some people probably hate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you being open and honest too with us, because it seems like a lot of coaches don't speak about strength and conditioning like you do. So we appreciate that you're so open with us, man. Thank you for doing that. Mouth taping, super interested in. Something that I feel like is becoming popular more recently. It might have been around for a while. I talk about belly breathing and nasal breathing often, but have yet to tape my mouth, to sleep or to train. What's your experience with that?
I think I've only done it once training. I guess I used to have asthma growing up. So like, I don't know if that causes panic whenever I'm short of air. Like even wearing these masks for COVID is like, it's so uncomfortable for me with training. But yeah, so I don't know if Cal Dietz at Minnesota started doing that, because I started hearing stories, and then someone recommended The Oxygen Advantage, which was the book. I have an article on my site, like 10 takeaways from Oxygen Advantage. And he had a section where he was like, if you've never slept with your mouth taped or never breathed through your nose at night, you don't know what restful sleep feels like. So after he said that, I went and got some tape. Like you can get like 3M micro tape. That's probably the best because it's pretty thin and you don't need to worry that you're going to suffocate yourself. Although I don't think it's going to happen. But it can come off pretty easy. But if you got facial hair like you, it might not stick that well. But yeah, dude, just tape your mouth shut. Go to bed.
Appreciate you saying that.
Like my first time I did it was like, I felt amazing in the morning. Like it's crazy how good you feel. You take your mouth shut and you're breathing through your nose the whole night. Feel amazing in the morning. I think that's one of mine. I had some other people try it, and they said the same thing. And it's just like anything. I mean, you feel amazing, and then it's like it becomes the new normal. But whenever I sleep and I know that my nose is plugged, and sometimes you can't tape it because like you just need to breathe. So like I can't tape my mouth shut if my nose is plugged. Sometimes it'll open it up, but if it's really plugged, I can't even do it. I feel awful in the morning. If I sleep and I know that I'm mouth breathing, I'm so tired. So right now I tape it shut and I wear a nasal strip so that it keeps the nose open. But yeah, I would recommend it to I mean, I don't want to have anyone do it and then like die. So I don't want to say like, I want to recommend it to everyone and then something bad happens. But yeah, dude, it's you sleep way better. And I don't see why. So just try it out. I mean, just tape the mouth shut, go to bed. I don't really do it training because my weight room is like a fishbowl at the university, how like there's glass mirrors. So everyone looks in, and if I'm training with my mouth taped, they'd be like, what's going on in there, So I just don't do it. But also, I think it would depend. If you're doing like an aerobic session, you want to be very aerobic, it could maybe be a good thing for you. But if I'm squatting heavy, doing like a hard lifting session, I don't want to have anything distracting me from just giving better effort into weights. And if I'm taping my mouth shut, I can't breathe that well if I'm getting exhausted, so I'm just not going to do it. But yeah, doing it when you sleep. I think the idea is that you get more carbon dioxide in your blood, and that helps the transport of oxygen. And when you breathe out of your mouth, it actually gets carbon dioxide out, and you want to keep it in. So by just taping the mouth shut, you get less air in and less air out. So you're always getting a little bit less going in and out, and that helps the transport of oxygen. That's the basic idea. It's called like the Bohr effect. So I could be wrong on this because I haven't looked into it in a long time, but yeah, I do know that you feel better when you do it.
Yeah. Excellent. And that's all we need to know.
Yeah.
Favorite podcast guests you've had, if you were to send anybody to your podcast. I mean, you've had some awesome people on. We recently were listening to Ben Patrick, knee over toe guy. Again, mentioned Tommy John a couple times. He had some really, really smart people on there. If you could send any of our listeners, to 2 or 3 of them, what would those podcasts be?
To my podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, recently I've been so stuck on the patellar tendon, so I'm like, and actually Mike Boyle, the goat of strength conditioning, has been listening to them, and he's like the one from Keith Barr, the one from Joe Cook. I think those, I mean, all the ones on the patellar tendon are pretty informative, but the one with Joe Cook covers so many points. If you've ever had knee pain, that one is huge. Like, and knee pain in the front, listen to that one with Joe Cook, and you'll learn so much stuff about what and I try to keep it as actionable as possible, so like you can leave and have things to do instead of just having a bunch of theory. And then the stuff by Keith Barr too is like both of those podcasts. And the interesting thing is Jill Cook and Keith Barr disagree all the time on Twitter. And they're pretty upfront about their disagreements with each other, but they both have really actionable stuff for you to help or just look at any tendon issue, dude. Tendons are so involved with sport because they're so demanded in sport that if you're an athlete or a coach, whatever, you can understand tendons better. You're probably going to be able to keep people healthier, keep people performing better for a longer period of time. And then the stuff with Joe Cook, just huge to understand knee pain. It's cool stuff because it's so misunderstood and it's still evolving. So I think those two shows, Keith Barr, Joe Cook, are huge episodes, probably for mostly everyone. There's so many takeaways from those.
That's awesome. We'll send everybody that way. Make sure they check those out. So last question we always ask, and there have been a lot of really good takeaways. You mentioned action items, things that people can just do right now, after listening to this podcast. But so we want to ask all our guests this, and it can be an action item. Like we mentioned, it can be, we've talked about isometrics. We've talked about the programming. We mentioned some things off air that are really interesting just about kind of strength and conditioning in general. What, Jake, do you think we as coaches in the strength and conditioning in the strength and conditioning realm are missing?
Okay, so I think I've kind of been addressing this like in my stories. Usually on like a Sunday, I'll have a deeper thought because I don't have any obligation on Sunday, so I'll just post something kind of like that. So, anyways, what I think we're missing in the strength and conditioning field is creating a difference between what is objective and what is subjective. What is objective fact versus what is subjective. I saw this coach do this. This was my experience. This guy did this. LeBron James eats a banana and he's good at basketball, so we should all eat bananas. That's like a subjective example. Dude, most strength coaches, mostly everything you see online is all these it's all subjective experiences, subjective. This guy does this, a quote from this guy, like escaping responsibility by giving a quote to someone else. But what is objective fact? Why do we not focus on what is objective fact? I think that's what we need to do. What is objective fact and what is subjective experience? What is subjective perception? The problem with strength conditioning is you work with athletes and both of them matter. You try to center the program around objective facts, but the subjective experience also matters. If you have it all on objective facts, and let's say 1x20 is the best program, but their subjective perception is, dude, I hate this program, then change the program. Because if you have enough objective references to pull from, you know how to train people. But yeah, I think if we start with the objective facts and we're training a soccer player, we say put the ball in the back of the net, prevent the other team from doing it. You work with a basketball player, put the ball in the hoop, prevent the other team from doing the same. I think that's what we need to have. We need to start with the game. People say, oh yeah, so many people don't start with the game. Dude, you're not starting with the game. None of these strength coaches are starting with the game. If you're a strength coach and you're starting with the game, you're kind of admitting that you're not that useful. Like, okay, I work with women's basketball. Who's the most important person on the staff? The recruiting coordinator. Bring in good athletes. That's how I'm going to look like a good strength coach. Bring in good athletes and we win games. So yeah, I think as strength coaches, we need to be more objective because it's all subjective, man. All of it. And how are we ever going to further our knowledge in the field if we're just pulling off of subjective references and being like, well, Cal Dietz does this. Well, he does this. Well, I saw this happen here. Well, good story. LeBron James eats a banana. That's the same exact thing. It is the same exact argument when you say this guy deadlifts 500 and he's a good offensive lineman. Well, guess what? LeBron James eats a banana and he's good at basketball. The same exact argument, and people don't understand that. They say, well, no, because it has something to do with it. Well, then explain it better. Give me a better explanation. Otherwise, you don't know it well enough. So yeah, that's my main argument, or my main problem with strength conditioning is it's just all subjectivity, all over the place. But if you can be objective, we can actually get more knowledge, and we can move. We can learn more about the human body, learn more about performance. We can make a bigger impact on people. But if we're just going back on subjectivity, we get nowhere. We go around in a million different directions. So that's my main frustration.
Everybody knows how to warm up, and then Jake Tuura comes on the podcast and says, play spike ball. And it just makes so much sense, right? So people do need to understand that there's benefits to everything. Jake, man, thanks so much for being on. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so mainly I post on Instagram, Jake Tuura. It's Tuura, and then my website is Jacked Athlete, and I sell a few programs on there. And then I don't really write much anymore. I'm gonna get back into that, but I post all my podcasts and all the notes there. So I think quite a bit of information. But yeah, if people reach out on Instagram, I will usually reply. Or sometimes I don't reply very well. So my email is you guys probably put that in, JTUURA, the number 2 @gmail.com. That's probably the better way to reach out to me.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much again for being on. Thanks for spending a little extra time with us this evening. This has been awesome. I think so many things people can take away from this. And if anything, as soon as you stop listening to this, turn it off and start doing your isometric lunges.
Facts. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys.